What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 7, Thursday Night Football.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
Okay, in this video, I'm going to give you my top picks for the Thursday Night Football Showdown between the New Orleans Saints and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, let's take a look at this Thursday Night Football Showdown between the New Orleans Saints and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So at the quarterback position, now I would like Trevor Lawrence, but he is questionable. So you got to keep an eye on the injury news. He also is more expensive here than Derek Carr, and he doesn't have as good of a matchup. So with all those things considered, it might look like the quarterback to play here would be Derek Carr from the New Orleans Saints playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. And Derek Carr, he's only averaged 12.4 fantasy points per game on the season, but he did score 20 fantasy points last game. He's getting an average of 1.8 rush attempts per game. Going to be about 55% owned. He's projected at 14.6 fantasy points here tonight. He's 8,800 DraftKings salary. Vegas thinks there's going to be 39.5 points scored in this game. They have the Saints favored by 1.5. So you're going to save some salary with this pick. It's a better matchup. Probably feel a lot more comfortable with a healthy Derek Carr than a questionable Trevor Lawrence. But don't be fooled here. If Trevor Lawrence is good to go, if they say he's okay to play, I do like Trevor Lawrence. I think he's the better quarterback with a better team. But I am just a little concerned with the matchup and the injury. So I like Derek Carr here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So two studs on the slate here for the New Orleans Saints. You have Alvin Kamara playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing running backs. Now, Alvin Kamara has averaged 19.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 17.3 rush attempts per game and 8.3 pass targets per game, so a ton of volume here. Been on the field for 100% of the snaps. Going to be about 55% owned, projected at 15.5 fantasy points here tonight. He's 10,400 DraftKings salary. So Alvin Kamara has scored 17, 19, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 19, 22, and 11 rush attempts on top of 8, 3, and 14 pass targets. So you can see Alvin Kamara is involved in the passing game, which makes him a dangerous fantasy player. So I like Alvin Kamara here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I also like Travis Etienne from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the New Orleans Saints have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing running backs. Travis Etienne is averaging 19.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 18.8 rush attempts per game and 4 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 44% owned, projected at 14.9 fantasy points here tonight. He's 10,200 DraftKings salary. Now, what I will say about this pick is if Trevor Lawrence is questionable, they might opt to run the ball more with Travis Etienne. Now, he doesn't have the best matchup here. The Saints are pretty good defending opposing running backs, but so are the Jaguars. So neither of these running back matchups is particularly good here. Now, Travis Etienne scored 23, 39, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 18, 26, and 20 rush attempts on top of 3, 5, and 3 pass targets. So I like Travis Etienne here versus the New Orleans Saints.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy,
and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video.
So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. So up until now, really haven't gotten into many players, under the radar players, mostly just the studs on the slate. But we will get into some good picks here at the wide receiver position. This is where you're going to get the chance to differentiate your lineup, I think. So the top pick on the slate for me here tonight is Michael Thomas from the New Orleans Saints playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. Give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Michael Thomas averaging 10.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.8 pass targets per game. Going to be about 43% owned. Been on the field for 78% of the snaps. Projected at 11.9 fantasy points here tonight. Now I like this pick. He's only 7,000 DraftKings salary. Good matchup, and he scored 10, 11, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 7, and 6 pass targets. So I like Michael Thomas here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now another wide receiver for the Saints is Rashid Shaheed, and he's averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 4.5 pass targets per game. Going to be about 26% owned, projected at 7.7 fantasy points here tonight. He's only 5,000 DraftKings salary, and he scored 18 fantasy points last game off of 6 pass targets and 2 rush attempts. So I like his price tag sitting at only 5,000 DraftKings salary. So I like Rashid Shaheed here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I also like Chris Olave from the New Orleans Saints. He's a stud on the slate here for the Saints. And he's averaging 14.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.8 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 48% owned, projected at 13.4 fantasy points here tonight. He's 9,000 DraftKings salary. Chris Olave scored 17 fantasy points last game off of 10 pass targets. Now, he is 2,000 more expensive than Michael Thomas, but it looks like he's gotten more pass targets and he's been more productive. So I like Chris Olave here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, for the Jaguars here, the stud on the slate is Calvin Ridley, and he's averaging 13.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.3 pass targets per game. Now, the Saints have a middle-of-the-pack defense defending opposing wide receivers. He's going to be about 40% owned on the field for 82% of the snaps, projected at 13.4 fantasy points here tonight. He's 8,400 DraftKings salary. Calvin Ridley has scored 7, 24, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 8, and 2 pass targets on top of 1 and 2 rush attempts. So he'll get a rush attempt every so often here. Averages about a half a rush attempt a game. So I think Calvin Ridley is in a good spot here tonight. So I like Calvin Ridley. Now, the one thing to be cautious of here with the injury, with the questionable tag for Trevor Lawrence, you want to be a little bit careful of these wide receivers for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I have a feeling one of these two top wide receiver ones is going to put up some big points. So I probably would play one or the other, but I don't blame you if you just play like Travis Etienne and then stack up these New Orleans Saints wide receivers. That could make a lot more sense. But nonetheless, I like Calvin Ridley here versus the New Orleans Saints. And the other wide receiver that I like for the Jacksonville Jaguars is Christian Kirk. He's averaging 14.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.2 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 77% of the snaps, going to be about 46% owned, projected at 12.4 fantasy points here tonight. He's 8,000 DraftKings salary, 1,000 more on FanDuel. And Vegas, they think there's going to be 39.5 points scored in this game, which you know already. Which doesn't really matter so much on a one-game slate. So Christian Kirk scored 14, 14, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 6, 8, and 12 pass targets. So I like Christian Kirk here versus the New Orleans Saints. Okay, moving on to the tight end position, I like Evan Ingram from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the New Orleans Saints, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. Actually, have a good defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing tight ends. Now, Evan Ingram is the pass catcher that I would play here from the Jacksonville Jaguars, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.3 pass targets per game, on the field for 76% of the snaps, going to be about 36% owned, projected at 10.1 fantasy points here tonight. He's only 5,800 DraftKings salary. So Evan Ingram has scored 11, 7, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 8, and 8 pass targets. So I like Evan Ingram here versus the New Orleans Saints.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.